And here we are today talking about then kind of the bigger picture, the future on what needs to be done to keep us on track and further improve the Komodo and KMD. And this is something, of course, our community is very passionate about. So now is kind of the time to really kickstart these discussions about the future and what does the future hold for Komodo and KMD, and how does this all tie together, because we have been like the leaders in the atomic swap and DEX technology, creating interoperability between the different protocols. We have a lot of innovative concepts, a lot of innovation technology and ideas and talented team. So I think we have all the means to really do something here. Behind this podcast, there are a group of blockchain veterans, and we are here to guide you on your journey to crypto. To get started, you can head to komodoplatform.com/guide and download that PDF resource. And with that, you will learn on how to take control over your assets, free your crypto, and use our non-custodial wallet, Komodo Wallet. With that said, let's jump to today's episode. I'm here joined by many Komodo team veterans today, and we are here going to be talking about tokenomics in general and KMD tokenomics specifically. And of course, tokenomics are something that every newcomer in crypto is especially interested to understand when they're looking for any project. And there's now a long history of projects trying different things and different theories and concepts that we are now kind of discussing in this podcast, and also then discussing what that means for KMD and Komodo going forward. But now let's go and introduce our guests. So we have Jason Polycryptoblock Brown, who's a business developer and kind of the driving force behind these KIP proposals. And if you have any questions about those, then he's very available on the Komodo Discord to take any questions. And next we have Ton SMK Minette, who's a QA and DevOps person in Komodo, taking care of a lot of things on the back end. And finally we have Kadan CA33 Stadelman, the CTO of Komodo, who's also a lot of ideas and insight in tokenomics and what can be done there. So I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting discussion today. So how are you doing, everyone?
Good. Doing fine here.
Yeah, great here. Thanks for setting this up. And I do agree. Looking forward to this, convo and discussion. And I do believe there's going to be a lot of interesting insights, for the community, but also for external observers, just to get an idea on what are we doing. And also, last but not least, it's kind of tokenomics upgrades and updates, but they bring technological implications, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe they have also a big impact on the strategic positioning of Komodo and the KMD asset as such.
Before we go more into that, let's go through some of the basics and discuss about tokenomics in general. So I have a few questions for you, for everyone. So first I would like to ask you, SMK, to kind of give us a definition of tokenomics in general, so for those who might not be fully aware of what this term really means.
Okay. It's a word you hear a lot, but you don't often hear it explained. So basically, tokenomics, the goal of it is to create a system that's sort of fair, secure, and sustainable. And we do that by balancing inflation, deflation, supply and demand, the needs of the network, the desires of the community, and the project developers. So it's a complex equation. There's a few aspects to it. So you've got technical, utilitarian, social, and regulatory perspectives. So I'll just quickly run through those. The technical approach, it's basically, what's the block reward like? How are things mined, staked, like yield farming? Those are all sort of inflationary mechanisms. Then we've got stuff like provably burned coins, which are deflationary. And you've also got stuff like halvings, which they're still inflationary because it's adding to the pool, but it reduces the amount of inflation as it goes along. So the goal here from the technical approach is to make sure that there's sufficient liquidity without excess supply causing dilution of value. And the mechanisms that are technically applied, the code that we write and everything else, have a direct influence over the coin emission rate and by extension its dilution. Next up, the utilitarian approach or aspect, which is what we're using everything for. So for holders, that's stuff like earning from staking, buying masternodes, participation in governance like DAO or the KIP proposals that we're talking about, and the vote that we'll hold later on. For traders, the utility is more stuff like reduced fees for using or trading a coin, like our DEX does if you pay in KMD, and Binance offers similar discounts with BNB when you trade there. Another important consideration for traders is how liquid the market for a coin is. So how easy is it for me to convert it into an alternative good or asset? So you can have something that's worth a lot of money, but if there's no market for it, it's just going to kind of sit there and look pretty. On the social side of things, bringing the community and everyone else into it. So it's more of a concern about the distribution of the coin across addresses and holders. That can have a direct impact on government, coin production under something like proof of stake. So whales will inevitably persist as whales under a system like that. And if you don't have a well kind of spread out distribution of coins, you also run the risk of potential manipulation of market prices. So in a decentralized world, ideally the majority of supply is not in a SEX wallet or centralized exchange wallet. The development and project team wallet should be healthy enough to ensure a long-term future, but not so bloated that a rug pull or a rage quit leaves the community lost. So if you have a look at a rich list, and if you were to graph it out, you probably want more of a horizontal than a vertical gradient of ownership of coins for each address. On the social side, the network effect is also a factor. So you've got things like positive brand recognition, a cute mascot for a meme coin. There are ways that lead to an increase of demand. You've also got sort of short-term hype stuff, Hollywood endorsements. They're usually good for a pump, but in the long run, a reputation of innovation, quality, and integrity is a far better indicator of the future prospects of a project. The last aspect is the one that nobody really likes. It's the regulatory perspective. So it's basically implications of tokenomics choices can be pretty devastating if not careful. It's not limited just to the negative outcomes from ambiguous or belligerent regulators. It also includes the implications of mistakenly placing trust in projects like, say, FTX, where Sam Bankman-Fried basically had the power to grant himself loans based on his own evaluation of the shitcoin he created. So the industry evolves best when we learn from the lessons of other projects and we have the agility to adopt systems that are resilient enough to survive the next bear and be in a position to ride the next bull. Easier said than done because it's a very complex equation. There's a lot of angles to come at it. But really, it just comes down to the eternal struggle between supply, demand, and government.
Wow, thank you. That was very comprehensive.
No
there's so much there. So let's see what if Polly has something that he can add to this. explanation. And I specifically would like to ask Polly about the supply side and the demand side, and kind of maybe you can clarify to us the difference and how these things are usually handled in tokenomics.
Sure. Yeah. SMK gave a pretty in-depth description just about tokenomics in general. So yeah, as most of it knows, just a portmanteau of tokens and economics, and basically just refers to how the system is supposed to function, and in maintaining a certain trajectory value for the underlying token, whether that's flat or deflationary or inflationary in some cases. It's basically, how do we create an economy, out of the blockchain currency that we created? It's in the name cryptocurrency, currency. How do we make this into an actual functional system that people will be able to exchange their tokens for goods and services, across the world? Your question about supply side tokenomics and demand side tokenomics. So supply side tokenomics deal with like how many coins are in issuance, what's the inflation rate of the coin, does it taper off over time, like in a halving, how's the distribution of newly generated coins, how does that get dispersed amongst the different participants in this ecosystem? And the demand side tokenomics is kind of like what SMK was referencing regarding the utilitarian, the utility purpose of a token. It's like, what's it being used for? What types of markets are gravitating towards the coin? What kinds of services need to be integrated to get the coin use case and cause more demand for the coin on the market than there is supply. Now, some of these mechanisms can be more internal based. For instance, mechanisms like staking or masternodes do provide like a weak demand side tokenomics value proposal, because it forces users to have to hold the coins for a certain amount of time to be able to gain some sort of effect. That means those coins are not on the way to market, so to speak, that they're more likely to be pulled aside and therefore not be sold. Another type of demand side tokenomic factor would be actually it's transaction fees, and we've seen this. You see this in every blockchain, but one of the shining examples of it would be Ethereum with its EIP 1559 half gas fee burns. So this creates a deflationary effect. Why it's a demand side mechanism is because people, they're being forced to consume their coins. So consumption is a big factor in for demand side tokenomics as well. So that kind of covers the difference between supply side and demand side. Supply side is a lot of the stuff that we can fix regarding the code and adjusting the emission rates, how many coins get released, the different mechanisms that they can get released. The demand side is what can people actually use and do with these coins.
Excellent answer. There's so much information already shared, and let's see what we have next. As we are going to hear from Kadan, and I guess specifically Kadan, I would like to ask about what it means to burn a coin or token, because this is something we'll be discussing today, specifically in this episode. So maybe you can educate us on that, plus then anything else you feel like what was not said yet by SMK or Polycryptoblock.
Sure. So the act of burning, right, like is basically sending coins to an address that, is a valid, receiving address, but you could cryptographically not create a private key, right, that would serve as the basis of the key pair, which you would basically derive this receiving address, this specifically formatted public key, right? And this essentially means, well, if I send coins to an address which basically can only receive coins, you could never have a private key to sign a transaction to spend those keys, these coins become, essentially unspendable and kind of like, like gone, inaccessible forever, right? Like, to put it simple. And this process is called like burning coins. This also would actually mean that technically we're removing the burned coins from the circulating supply, right? From the coin cap. So that'd be less coins around. However, I'd also like to add that I believe there's like various, methodologies in regards to like burning coins, because if I had even like a valid key pair, like created and I send coins there and I lose my private key or I delete my, wallet.dat and I really can't access it ever again. I mean, it's not provably burned in terms of like cryptographic validation, like of the underlying like pub key that it's receiving the coins to. But it's still kind of like, like economically burned, and these coins should be considered gone from the supply as well. So these are kind of like, I guess, the two main, groups where kind of like coins just vanish from the circulating supply, even though they still show up as being somewhere, right? And we, for example, Komodo Core Daemon is, if I'm not mistaken, one of the only like daemons, right? Like basically UTXO based chain daemon with a native like burn protocol interface. So you could already fetch, coins that are gone. And that was kind of like a pre-requirement. That's something we've already like implemented for this upcoming like changes now, etc., etc. And as we're like trying to work towards a deflationary, like model and tokenomic model. And yeah, by the way, tokenomic model, I guess I summarize it really for noobs, people who really don't know anything about this, as kind of like the business model of a coin. That's probably like a simple, like order. Yeah, but that's, I guess, regarding like burning coins, that's pretty much like the summary, the essentials of it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, the business side of the coin. I'm kind of curious to hear like a follow-up question, like how is this the main means usually in crypto and in blockchain project to decrease the supply and burn tokens? Like, is this the most common way to do tokenomics, or how common is this?
So I'd say, I guess whenever you really like burn an asset, like really burn, and here, like, I guess like it's really like this definition of this term, like burning coins, right, destroying them, then yes, this would be ultimately the way of kind of like decreasing like, the circulating supply. But then again, I want to say, there's no black and white in regards like to this topic, because I believe, again, you could even like lock a coin for a prolonged amount of time, and you could like virtually or technically consider these coins gone from the supply because they are not like liquid, they're not accessible anymore, like in terms of like sending them for a long time. So there's probably like a lot of like variations and, like kind of like exotic constellations in terms of what could be considered really, like decreasing in terms of, like tokenomics. I mean, you could probably even like implement some type of mechanism which will have users. And I mean, if we look at all the staking, like networks, the mechanism of like locking up your coins for a prolonged amount of time in order to receive a reward. I mean, this is an incentivization of taking coins off the circulating supply in terms of like liquid market, assets that are really like, accessible, tradable. So is that maybe also like something that we could or should consider as like, put it in brackets or in short, like a temporary, right, like decrease of supply. So it could be like, yeah, I mean, again, then these deflationary mechanisms, I guess at the end of the day, it does boil down to burning them. If you really want to do this, like kind of like this forever burn, like remove it like for an infinite amount of time and that kind of like cryptographically validated, then it's really burning, right? No matter which like method you take, like for example, Binance, they do this, an organization, burn their coins from the assets they collect, they hold, they generate in fees, etc. Then there's protocols that have a burn mechanism that's part of the native protocol, right? So it's not kind of like manually handled like Binance does, but it's like with Ether, for example, part of transaction fees gets burned. With Komodo and our DeFi protocol, part of every swaps generated revenue, basically the trading fee gets burned. So these are all kind of like these deflationary mechanisms that do, decrease, like the supply. Yeah. And I guess the goal is to have as many, like healthy, I mean, you could just burning coins doesn't help, right? Anyone, right? Like it needs to be, healthy, balanced. It gotta make sense in terms of like the overall network utilization. So I guess like the utility model, and maybe that's a term we don't have yet, is probably like the most important aspect in a blockchain network. You can have as fancy, tokenomics with this liquidity mining protocols and all that stuff, and then turn it like deflationary and stuff. But again, I believe if the underlying basis isn't set well, then it's. But I guess it becomes difficult. But Poli probably has like also like a lot of information coming down like during like the presentation, which really I guess like reflects very well in like why we're doing it, and I guess also a lot of aspects of these questions, like the tokenomics aspect, burning aspect, will become clearer when people also understand, what's an expected economic impact, also what does it mean like from a technological perspective, like what does this mean also for KMD, Komodo, the coin as an asset. And but before I shift off too much, I hope it answers the question.
Definitely. And I think this brings us forward to talk about KMD specifically, because that's what we all want to talk about and hear about. So I guess my first kind of little question is, because within the community on Discord, we discussed about the term tokenomics, and our community, of course, points out that KMD is not a token, but a coin with its own blockchain. So what do you think? Could we talk about Coinomics instead of tokenomics? How do you feel about a term like that?
I mean, I know there's like an Austrian company, I think it's called like Coinomics or something like this. I mean, I don't have an issue, right? Like we could also call it like the general economics of a crypto asset, which is probably a more clean term and not this DeFi Degen language, but I'm okay and happy to orient it towards any term we want to use. So Coinomics, it doesn't sound too bad as well.
Yeah, it's all kind of synonymous, but tokenomics is definitely more recognized by the crypto space, so it's probably the best word to use to refer to it, regardless of whether it's technically a coin or a token.
Let's move on. I have a question specifically now going to the KMD side. So Komodo was born in 2016, and we launched as a fork of Gcash, which was a fork of Bitcoin. And since then, it's been a long road and long evolution, and a lot has changed, and a lot of in terms of tokenomics has all changed, and the thinking has changed, and there's new knowledge, and there's new information and thoughts, and that's what we're going to be talking about. But first, I would like to ask all of you, like, what do you think about the KMD past and present? Like, where are we today? Where are we coming from? Maybe what do you think about the current model of KMD? Do you see any issues with it? And this kind of general overview on where do you think we are standing right now?
Well, I'll just start. I mean, I think obviously because we are here, we're talking about KYP, which have the word improvement proposal in it, right? Like, so we obviously, there are issues, right? Like there are stacks that are kind of like suboptimal, and stuff that still kind of like did orientate, like towards, like a tokenomic model that was from the old days. But obviously, and I guess a lot of projects, go through this like process, right? It's like, these are like shifts, and they are basically a realignment, right? Like repositioning, like, and just like reorientation. It's not as, huge and not as significant change, as one might think. But I believe like these are definitely like enhancements. So they really like improve something compared to the peer situation. And I believe they also reflect the path that we're going, which is definitely like a good path and like the right direction. If we look at to where code-based technological stack quality, etc., were N years ago, and we compare it to today, there is like progress, growth, in terms of every single like technological aspect. And I believe it's good, right? Like speaking from that, but I also think, right, there's things that need to be done. there is areas where we do definitely have like weakness, like where we are improving, where we need to further and constantly, keep improving. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much like my take from that.
Well, let's hear next from SMK if you have anything to add, and then last from Polly, because then you are heading to the presentation after that one.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest or most recognizable parts of KMD's tokenomics history would be the Unclaimed active user rewards, which basically created sort of a jackpot for whoever was lucky enough to mine that coin. Unfortunately, that sort of led to situations which weren't ideal for the network. Mining pools would sort of attack heavy when they thought they'd get one of those big blocks. A few of our notary nodes as well kind of figured out how to detect time and attack those, and the community aspect was a little bit impacted by that. So I think it was as good. One of the last tokenomics changes we made, we've been kind of slowly reducing the possibility for that to be a factor. It's also difficult to be able to accurately predict supply when, at any moment a massive amount of coin is added in a single block. So we're definitely heading in the right direction, and I think the current kit proposals are an extension of the last few that we've done. And yeah, it's definitely an improvement. We just incrementally tweak till we get the balance right.
You touch on the Notary Network. Briefly explain, because maybe not everyone is aware, this is quite unique feature of Komodo. So what are the notary nodes and what is their role?
Yeah, I take it for granted. I've been involved in it for so long. It's more or less once a year. We have a hard fork, which is the great time for us to implement some of those technical changes. And alongside that is an election where basically anybody can run. You don't have to have a specified amount of KMD to put in a candidacy. And then it's left to a community vote, so everyone that has KMD in their wallet will be airdropped a special vote token. The vote takes place, and then that season's notary nodes are elected. A few of the high-performing notary nodes from the prior year also get automatically re-elected. And then there's 64 nodes in total. A few of them are dev nodes so that we can continue to test things. And these nodes will secure Komodo formally to the Bitcoin blockchain through op return. We currently use Litecoin just because the Bitcoin fee market was a little bit crazy. And we also secure a whole bunch of other coins, half smart chains and a few third-party projects, which protect them from 51% attacks by using our delayed proof of work technology. Which is more or less like a checkpoint block every 10 blocks, just to say this is the state of the network at this point in time. And it has been tested by a few people that thought that they might be able to prove us wrong, but no one has yet. So although 51% attacks aren't as common as they used to be, I'd like to think that we're part of the reason for that.
Good point. That's indeed a unique problem that Komodo has solved and we have had that solution, the delayed proof of work blockchain security, for many years now. And we're using it and many blockchains are using it. So that's a great innovation and kind of one thing that needs some KMD. So that's like gives small demand for KMD and has been one of the KMD's use cases in the past and present. So perhaps on that, Jason, you could expand on what has been the KMD's use cases and the tokenomics and the supply and the inflation in the past and currently.
Yeah, so Our Komodo's primary and main purpose is our delayed proof of work mechanism, as SMK described. However, we are adding different things like the DEXV burn mechanism that Kadon described earlier. However, in general, when Komodo was created, a lot was not thought about into its economic, system. Initially it was, the early, like 2016, 2017 when Komodo came out. There was very few different kinds of token models to go from. So one of the things that Komodo initially did was distribute all its coins out, immediately. And so while this created a great distribution of coins and made sure they weren't concentrated in the hands of a few, it also kind of had a problem that we weren't aware of then regarding, the amount of coins that have the ability to go to market. Being that now that they're all spread out, people can buy, and sell the entire supply that was existent, as opposed to just a small subsection of supply. In a lot of modern day cryptocurrencies, one of the things that we see is that a majority of the supply is actually totally off market. You'll see coins with billions of coins in their supply, but only maybe 1 or 2% of the entire coin supply is actually in the hands of people. Now, the reason why people did this is to kind of exploit these coin tracking sites and to get a high market cap, which thereby grants them more eyes and more, eventually users. And it's one of the things we've kind of been struggling with in the beginning, since the beginning, rather. A couple of the other things that, why we're working on these, presenting these kit proposals and talking about tokenomics in general is like a lot of our initial assumptions, were, not correct. We didn't see the massive use and explosion of EVM style chains, and proof of stake style chains, delegated proof of stake style chains, as opposed to UTXO style chains and proof of work style chains. So one of our, was supposed to be one of our main offerings, with delayed proof of work, got severely limited because a lot of ecosystems, decided to do consensus in another way, even though those ways might not be, as secure as proof of work is. So, like, by, taking, these facts from, where we come from in the past, and, we can plan out a new future by adding, new use cases, such as like the DEXV burn that was brought up earlier, as well as others, and to basically kind of get a handle on the total coin supply that's out there, whether that is via locking them up for like a proof of stake possibly, or some nodal reward, or through another mechanism that essentially now we have a chunk of supply that we know is not on the way to market, right? That can't just be sold, immediately, which then, messes up the entire prediction of where we can see the markets going and what, to make the changes that we need to make.
It's like impressive how long Komodo has been around, and like we are still trying to improve and change things, that there's progression. I think many tokens especially come and go, but Komodo is still here kicking. And here we are today talking about then kind of the bigger picture, the future, on what needs to be done to keep us on track and further improve the Komodo and KMD. And this is something, of course, our community is very passionate about. So now is kind of the time to really kickstart these discussions about the future and what does the future hold for Komodo and KMD, and how does this all tie together, because we have been like the leaders in the atomic swap and DEX technology, creating interoperability between the different protocols. We have a lot of innovative concepts, a lot of innovation technology and ideas and talented team. So I think we have all the means to really do something here with Komodo and KMD. So I think we are going to now pretty quickly move into the presentation. So Polly has prepared a presentation to kind of give an overview on the different aspects that we could be and should be discussing within the community, and then that we will be also voting on, which will be done in a similar fashion as with the annual vote for the notary node election spots. So I think I'm gonna just give it to you, Polly, and I guess I'll just clarify that, of course, or you can start by quickly explaining what are these improvement proposals in general, because this is a common term in the blockchain world, and in this case we are talking about Komodo improvement proposals, or KIPs. So yeah, take it away, Jason.
Okay, so KIPs, or Komodo improvement proposals, is our version of other improvement proposal systems that are used in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many other blockchains. These are to make fundamental changes to the blockchain, for either feature enhancement, or to, in our case currently, to rectify our tokenomics, structure. We initially had a tokenomics, our first one last summer, KIP 001, which had to deal with the active user reward reduction from 5% to 0.01%, which I'll be covering over here shortly. So why these tokenomics discussions first came about. So Komodo had a relatively high inflation rate. With its mining reward of 3 Komodo per block and a active user reward of 5% on 5% yearly on your holdings, just for sending a transaction. We were exhibiting inflation rates kind of akin to the inflation rates nations receive during economically difficult times, and with the added negative, unlike most nation states, we don't have a tax mechanism or something similar to essentially curtail the increase in money supply. And unfortunately, in crypto, a majority of people they're just focused on price. And while having nice price for your coin is nice, and it's not everything, it is something that we need to make a better, more focused efforts towards to basically expose Komodo to the larger crypto community. In the past, we've primarily and still are, tech focused, because that's the fundamental basis of, any software project, is you have to have a, good product. But placing that product in the right frame is what's really needed for it to grow. So these tokenomics discussions, basically, we're altering the fundamental premises behind Komodo. Initially with tokenomics, but there will be others, I assume, in the future that are more adding utility and features as well. And these are done quite obviously through voting proposals. We had it's a 1 coin 1 vote proposal, very similar to what we do with our yearly notary node elections, where several options of votes are given that the community members can choose which option they would like. Typically it's variations of one main option, or a choice not to change it at all. So I'll quickly go over here the KIP 001 results. So this was our first major and probably the most major change we made to Komodo. The active user reward, which was a 5% yearly claim people could do, was slashed down to 0.01%, reducing the coin supply and the coin inflation of Komodo by several million coins a year. So this has an effect of initially less coins hitting the market, but also fewer coins that would have to be cycled in the supply for future price appreciation. The active user reward, it was quite beloved by most community members, and there was a lot of discussion around it. One of the major issues with it was that there was no real basis, no real cost basis for the creation of these new coins. So people were essentially creating new coins that didn't have any real cost for them to create, so they have no disincentive to sell them at below a certain price, because anything they would sell them at would be essentially profitable. And then because these coins were being produced and would eventually equal to approximately half the supply, the total supply that was estimated to be created, this lowers the cost basis of all the coins that were purchased previously with every new coin that gets created, which is a negative price effect, which is something that wanted to remove. The active user reward was kept in a minor form at 0.01%, namely to for two reasons. One, we didn't want to get rid of the entire reward. We want the initial point behind the active user reward was to reward users, and we still thought that was a good idea. However, reducing it down allowed it to really just cover things like transaction fees and utilizing the system, rather than give a reward that was disproportionate to the user's actual contributions. So in total, the votes, approximately 13 million votes were cast, and with 11 million voting to reduce the active user reward. Okay, so here we'll start on with the three new KIP proposals. The first one being a block subsidy reduction. So in Komodo, there was two ways really of generating coins. The first being the active user reward, which as I just mentioned, we reduced from 5% to 0.01%. And the other way of producing coins is through a block subsidy reward given to block producers for contributing their computing power in their operations to the network. Currently, this existing block reward is at 3, and with this KIP 002, it is suggested to reduce that down to 1 Komodo per block. Now, so the pros of this proposal is that it's going to reduce our coin emissions from about little under 1.6 million coins a year to about 525,000 coins a year. So that's a million coins a year reduction of new coins that would be, less new coins that would be produced, which means less coins that would have to be sold off. Before previously generated coins would have to be purchased, which would then raise price. So what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of new coins so old coins get bought. So the second pro to this, and one of the things that will be discussed in when the more formalized proposal gets posted, is the subsidizing of notary costs. So notary nodes, they have to run a lot more intensive hardware, and have to give a lot more time, their personal time to maintain operations. So we have a safe, secure network that not only runs smooth and consistently for us, but also provides attack protection for other blockchains. So notary nodes are very important, and they need to be compensated. And so one of the issues currently, due to the low Komodo price, large amount of coins forcibly have to be sold to cover these costs, right? So it creates this price deflationary effect, onto the market, which isn't good. So with this block subsidy reduction proposal, a subsidy for running the node, not tied to the coin, would be given, and the block producers could still keep their rewards. The main negative of this proposal is that you're getting less coins. It will only be 1 KMD per block, but the idea is that eventually that the value of that 1 KMD in the future will be more than 3 KMD of today. And like I just mentioned, less coins, new coins that are produced, the easier for the price to rise. So the next proposal here has to deal with a transaction fee increase and burn. So the transaction fee currently on the Komodo blockchain is, I think, where our official term is Komodo Toshis, like 10,000 Komodo Toshis, so 0.0001 per transaction. Now, this is great for sending coins to other people who are paying for goods and services. However, it might be too low in terms of what a fee initially was for, and that would be spam protection, right? Spam can become a big problem with chains, and luckily we have not had to deal with it so much, with Komodo. However, other blockchain projects, including ones in the Komodo ecosystem like Pirate, have had to deal with some severe spam attacks that created a bunch of issues for people running their software. And so to mitigate this in a slight effect, is proposed to burn the transaction fees, and then also possibly increase them from a somewhere between 10 times to 100 times fee increase. So currently there's only around 300 Komodo a year being cycled via transaction fees. So it's very small amount. So 10x increase would be 3,000, and 100x would be 30,000, or about, if the KIP 002 goes through, about 0.5% to 5% of the yearly emissions. 100x fee increase might be a bit too much. It's just being put there for posterity's sake, but a 10x increase could provide some additional cost, to send frivolous transactions on the network. This also creates an effect where no matter what block passes, there's always a little bit of the supply being reduced. And as mentioned, it makes it more expensive to spam. The main negative of it is things that require transactions, such as our notarization procedure, would be slightly more expensive. But still relatively cheap. Komodo's current price of around, it's hovering between 30 and 40 cents. It's still less than a penny, per transaction. Even at a 10x increase, it would be less than a penny per transaction, and still remain that way for quite some time, even if Komodo's price increased quite drastically. Now, as a spam prevention mechanism, it by itself will not, solve the problem. Spam is it's one of those things that you can mitigate, but you can't really fully solve. But this would, be a step in the right direction to mitigate this common blockchain problem. So the next one, this is kind of a big one, is the KIP 004 consensus change. So our previous proposals have really focused on a lot of the supply side, adjusting how many coins are produced, and restricting the amount of emission to better give the demand factors and people purchasing a greater chance for price appreciation. This is more of a demand side proposal, and through changing the consensus mechanism to allow users to be incentivized to hold Komodo for longer periods of time, and to prevent them from going, their coins going onto the market. This demand side incentive, combined with the previous proposals, such as the block subsidy reduction, would then allow more users to be able to participate in the production of coins, but at the same time, have those production coins be kind of more of a limited, scarce resource. Some potential solutions, so we'll post these in a upcoming document for the proposal here, would be proof of stake, a 50-50 split of our current proof of work, proof of stake, a grid coin style proof of stake with a split with the notary nodes, and a proof of stake with master nodes, with a 50% split with master nodes. The first two are kind of self-explanatory, but I'll go into a little bit about the last two. So the grid coin style proof of stake it's a little bit different than traditional proof of stake. Now, the staking mechanism part is pretty much the same. The main difference is with Gridcoin, for those who may know, is it's a project that allowed people to donate their computing power to solve science problems like finding the cure for cancer and finding different mathematical numbers and so on. And when somebody would stake a block, they could submit their proof of doing this work and would receive additional reward. So this type of mechanism could be attractive to an audience that we're currently not targeting, and that would be the CPU and GPU mining crowd. This would allow them to participate in the coin generation of Komodo. They would still be required to stake a block to actually claim those rewards, which creates a small demand factor as well, where they have to hold enough to be able to get a block to be able to claim their main reward for the computational work that they've done. And mentioned with this a notary split. We do not plan on changing the notary node section of our consensus at all. It's a very stable and a stable mechanism, keeps the blocks going. We don't have to really worry about network outages, not so much about random forking touches either, so it makes no sense to do away with that. However, if KIP 002 goes through, additional incentive might be necessary to tie in, with our current notary node system with the potential proof of stake systems. The last point there with the proof of stake and master nodes, very similar to systems that we've seen out there. It would just include the ability to lock up coins and run a full-time node in exchange to generate a bit of a reward, or to split the coin emission from the stakers and notary nodes with these people running nodes, because running nodes is one of the two main factors, I would say, to have a blockchain ecosystem. You got to have block producers, and you got to have people running the ledgers that make sure all the transactions are, everything's good. There's nobody doing a double spend and so on. So this would allow a lot of existing holders who might have coin supplies to take part in coin generation, and while at the same time providing the network a very useful service and increasing its node count. 1 second. So yeah, going through the pros and cons. So incentivizes withholding of coins from the market, via proof of stake or master nodes. Rewards. It could, if the grid coin system is selected, it could reward people for actual useful work, which is one of the biggest complaints about, cryptocurrency proof of work, is that, the work really isn't done for everything. Notaries could be, more greatly compensated. Depending on the system that is selected, the CPU, GPUs could be used to make Komodo blocks, or at the very least generate, a portion of the reward. In the cons here, it would require a bunch of additional work. This would not be a very unlike the other proposals that I mentioned here today. This one is it would be a lot of work. So we would not expect this to even come into effect until 2025, 2026. However, to make that appear, then we need to make a decision now, so we know which way to focus our efforts. Because it's very different if you're running a grid coin style proof of stake system, or not doing that and just running master nodes, or just switching to a proof of stake type of system, and a normal vanilla flavored one, would still be quite a bit of work. And it changes a fundamental layer of Komodo. So future kit proposals. So these ones that we've listed here are just really the beginning. We plan on continuing these far into the future, and are willing to listen to any ideas from the community for future proposals that could help the chain. These proposals really focus on stuff that would be consensus level changing. But doesn't mean that other ideas can't be proposed as well. We currently have a tokenomics room in our Discord, where anyone can bring up ideas for changes, and to debate the merits and drawbacks of the different proposals and such. To get on with some future proposals that we're looking at, some will be later this year, tentatively around September. One will be a vote about adding a VKMD bridge. So VKMD, for the members of our ecosystem that are unaware, stands for Varus KMD. So be a tokenized form of Komodo on its own blockchain, created by our sister project Varus, that forked from Komodo a few years back. It has some features to it that are very interesting to community members, and has been brought up several times in our Discord over the years, such as currency baskets, which is kind of like a UTXO style AMM, automated market maker style exchange, that you can put a basket of different currencies in and trade against that entire basket. They also have ID, identification systems, at least a very basic one that could be used to generate human readable names. As well, we can with some sort of identification system, utilize that for features and stuff in the future that might require that, or and also force a Komodo utilization to obtain these ID mechanisms. The next one is a burn generation mechanism. So this is one that I've been working out in the idea for quite in depth, and it's functionally similar to a tontine. So to educate the listeners, so a tontine is a type of investment mechanism where people pull their money into a specific pool, and as people, historically would die off, the rest of the people in the pool would receive a larger and larger share until there's the last person standing, so to speak, and then they would receive all the reward until they passed, and then the reward be shut off then. So this type of mechanism, was thought about partially due to the known belovedness of our old active user reward, and having a way for users to produce coins over long periods of time, to have kind of like a passive revenue system. But as I mentioned earlier, when I covered the KIP 001 and why that was done, this burn generation mechanism would actually have a cost to it. It wouldn't be investments of sorts, but it would be, you would burn a certain amount of coins, and you would get a certain percentage rate back. And the other parts of it, similar to the original tontine idea, as people would drop out, you would generate more and more coins. But attaching an initial burn to it, that delays the production of the coins by many years. So you would be generating coins, but you wouldn't be able to get your full principal amount back until a certain amount of time has passed. And then after that, it would be fully generative profit. More about this mechanism will be talked about definitely over the summer with a vote towards Q3 of this year. So there will be a lot more information. I'm sure that there will be plenty of questions on how it's supposed to work and everything. The other points, additional spam deterrence, and that actually ties into the next 2 points. One would be a transaction proof of work. So this isn't an actual like a tokenomics proposal, but more a functional change to additionally prevent spam. TXPOW was created by JL777 a few years back, probably like around 4 or 5 years now, that required a certain amount of leading zeros in the transaction hashes of transactions being sent in order to be considered valid. So this forces a potential spammer to do computational work for each transaction being done, which, just like our other spam deterrence mechanism by itself, won't stop everything, but will make it more difficult for attackers to flood the network with junk transactions. And this last one, output-based transaction fee scaling. So this is similar to actually what our ecosystem project Pirate was worked on to further reduce potential spam. Basically, the more outputs that you would have to a transaction, the greater the amount of fee per output that you would pay. So, which combined with the KIB 003, which it would increase the amount of coins being burned as well as provide spam deterrence. So yeah, that's kind of the conclusion for our tokenomic proposal. What happened in the past with KIB 001, what we have going on currently with KIB 2 through 4, and the voting that will be done for that in the upcoming months, and what we are looking forward to do in the future. And no doubt there will be plenty of other ideas and that will be coming up and be voted upon as well. And if the community has any ideas they would like to, pass forward or suggest, we're always open, to hearing them. So this concludes my presentation. Otto, I'll hand it back to you.
And thanks, Jason. There's a lot to discuss with this presentation, and not everything we have time to really go into today, but we are going to be talking a little bit about some of these proposals, especially the ones that are fast approaching, but like Polly was saying, a lot of these proposals are like years into the future, so that these discussions will continue on as time goes on, and we do need to make future episodes about this topic as well. And so there's just so much to go over here in this short period of time. So to start the follow-up discussion, I want to talk about the first proposal that we're going to be voting next, which is the block subsidy reduction. And so right now the block subsidy is 3 KMD per block, and the proposal is to reduce it to 1. And this, of course, affects those who are mining KMD, but then also the notary nodes, because they're also mining KMD. And at the moment, like Polly was presenting, it's part of their income that keeps up the servers running, is the KMD that they get from the new supply that is created. So part of this proposal is that there's going to be this subsidy given to the notary nodes, similar to how it was in the very beginning of Komodo history back in the day. So how is this going to be happening? Like, can you provide some more context? And whoever has that information, like, we could go to Yukadan first, and then see if SNK has something to add to this proposal, and then lastly to Polly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, given the reduction of coin emission, we do believe this will definitely, it will just shrink in the supply, and that should already have a economic impact on the price, because if demand just remains the same, right, we should see price already go up, right, but still, for the worst case scenarios and scenarios where we think, okay, stuff not fully done yet, etc., it might be just in the very early phase of the consensus change, provided the community votes for it, that the income of the NNs won't, suffice to cover the ongoing costs. And for that case, we said we will be able, to give them, this subsidy, to provide us a type of subvention and to basically pay at least for the server costs. And if we cover server costs or part of server costs or whatever, the model's going to be, they still would have the mined KMD as a reward, right? To look at. And this is just one of many, upcoming changes. And, besides the actual KYP needed changes, I mean, we're also working on stuff that's not really KYP relevant, but still tremendously affects Komodo tokenomics and specifically the demand side, right? Even supply side, right? The burn program on the DEX, right? That really directly targets the supply by burning part of it. So yeah, just to sum it up again, I mean, overall, I think this is very positive, right? The reduction of coin emission also gives it a higher value, just already by means of the network. I mean, obviously, if there's certain block space and certain block reward, etc., having a lot being mined or like little being mined that really like makes a difference. And yeah, we're also certain, looking at the Komodo blockchain itself, there is sufficient coins, in circulation, right? Like over 100 million coins, and then looking the fact that it's really like it's just dividable, right? Like BTC, and there's so many, I believe strongly like one day we'll be paying in Komodoshis or in Satoshis, right? Like that's gonna be kind of like the penny or dollar equivalent, like something along those lines. I believe it's like super positive, and given like this consensus chain and the requirement for us to cover like server costs, that's not an issue. We already run a server infrastructure of over 100 servers out there, right? Like various VPSs, various like bare metal like devices. We even have a CI/CD server in our like office, right? Like I won't disclose the location, but still we even have like that. So 864, or if I remove like team members and those already having a server, right, provided by the team, we're looking maybe at like 40, like additional like instances, 40 to maybe 50 servers that we would like have to add to our already, huge, like list of servers, just in terms of costs, right? We wouldn't obviously like control these servers technically, but just like cover the costs. That's not like a big deal, right? Like just like to also like clarify what we're talking about, right? Like in terms of like cost. But yeah, also, we've gone like through multiple like depot enhancements, which were like also like affecting like the resource requirements, resource consumption. And now we basically like run one server, right? Like we have like a containerized environment, like support, and basically really try to run everything on a very efficient, like scale and that would really, I don't see any like issue with that. But I strongly believe it's not going to be necessary for us, like, to subsidize, because KMD price should like cover it. We already can see like from the market action, NFA, right? Like no financial advice, but Komodo's up like, I don't know what it is, 40-50%, like in the last like month or so, or last two. So there's already like, like the bull market kicking in, pre-halving, around halving times. Also one thing, right? I'm not sure if we did kind of like, conclude potential dates, etc. But we're definitely looking at kind of like traditionally having as much as consent on changes, done as possible with the NN, elections. We can time the upgrade release, etc. But the reason is like third party, service providers, etc. They don't like multiple updates. Also, so the community is really aware, like, why do we do it like we do is one to two updates a year is already like a lot, and they manage like hundreds of coins, such exchanges, and yeah, we try to keep that like update requirement as low as possible. But that's probably like a potential timeline we could look around. We still like have like to figure stuff like within the team, and we'll definitely like provide details updates as soon as possible. But yeah, the whole team is like working like super busy in all these different things. This team is scaling up just like to add a little bit like information. And yeah, these are kind of like this, we're kind of like polishing, the last, layers. And there's a lot of like, a lot more like really positive news there, and also stuff I would like to say now, but I will go beyond this, the scope of the call. And for some aspects that I would like to share, I think it might like cause market manipulation, insider trading, and even like put me on risk. So I will have to wait like for certain news to be released like in due time by the specific like parties. And yeah, but things like go really well. I think we're heading in, or I'm certain we're heading in a very good direction, and the right direction. Yeah.
That is great to hear. Let's go around the room and hear also the thoughts of USMK and then to you, Polly, and in general about these proposals, but especially the first one coming up.
For me, I think the block reduction is it's a good idea. The obvious stuff is obviously reduced emission, reduced dilution of value. Some people might think, you're only getting one coin instead of three. the value of that coin, if it triples, it's the same thing. And that's, in crypto, that happens all the time. It mostly impacts the notaries, which, with the offer of subsidization, there's there's a safety net there, so that's negligible. And then the other people affected would be the miners, but as miners do, they do the maths. They figure out what the hash rate they need to, how much the hash costs them, and where they're going to point their rigs. So that sorts itself out pretty quickly as well. The actual community gets the most benefit out of this, especially if we go towards something like proof of stake, because it means that they almost kind of get back a form of the active user reward for holding their coins. So yeah, I think it's a net positive for quite a few reasons there. Normally, I'm not a fan of proof of stake because it's got a potential to perpetuate a plutocracy. But if it's only 25% of what's produced, the impact of that is limited. And yeah, it adds more reason for holding and reducing the supply side and increasing the demand as well. So I think the reduced block subsidy alongside proof of stake is a really good combination.
And what about you, Polly? Do you have something to add? Like, you gave the whole presentation already, but perhaps these answers have fueled something.
Yeah, so a couple things. So if we do switch to a proof of stake style mechanism, one of the concerns I heard was about the existing miners. But if you actually check like the amount of hash rate that's currently going to KMD, there isn't many miners actually mining right now. I think we have like less than 10 megasouls of Equihash hash rate currently mining, which the latest Equihash miner is a half a megasoul. So that lets you know there really isn't too many actually running mining Komodo. And additionally, those miners aren't incentivized to keep their coins once they mine. They actually have a hard electric cost that they have to pay. So switching to proof of stake, like SMK said, could actually be a lot more beneficial for community members, allow more people to take part in the block production process, and without anywhere near as much cost as you would through traditional mining. And it doesn't. You don't have the traditional problems with proof of stake because of our notary node system, which the idea is no matter what major consensus change, we'd still keep that. It's been a solid system for going on almost a decade now. And it keeps the blocks moving, keeps everything orderly and timed, and provides a way of if fixes and stuff need to be done, that they could be propagated out pretty quickly. So as opposed to normal consensus style changes where you have to contact every mining pool, so let them know the options to upgrade. It's a lot easier with our notary system because the notary nodes are a lot more interconnected. And what else? So in the upcoming weeks here, we'll have a document outlining the choices and have a hard date for the voting. This presentation is really just to, aggregate all the major points about what's being discussed, what we want to try to push forward, with the community's consent, and kind of give a couple sneak peeks into the future as well. We do have a few other ideas even right now about what we can do that would require consensus changes, but as also Kadam mentioned, there are things specifically related to more the demand side of the Komodos economics that won't require any consensus changes that are worked on as well, which we'll be talking about those, but it's not really part of the KIP discussion. But just the whole point of me saying that was to we have got a bunch of stuff going on. We we got a bunch of stuff more in the future, and we're ready to add any more ideas the community may have if they're well presented.
Well, thank you everyone for joining this podcast and sharing this insight and covering these plans that we have and these options. So yeah, thank you to Karan and Jason, SMK. So I think with that, we are going to be concluding this episode. So if you're interested to learn more, then you just head over to Komodo Discord, and there we will have discussions about these proposals. And like Jason was saying, feel free to propose also your own ideas to the community and to the team. And everything's kind of being considered right now as we're thinking the long-term future for Komodo and KMD. So it's important that we are having these discussions now, and we are going to the right direction. So with that said, thanks to everyone for tuning in, and be sure to also check out the next episode when it comes out. Thank you for listening to the episode. We are eager to hear your thoughts and feedback, as well as your ideas for future guests or stories that we should be covering. If you have any of those, then head over to our Discord. You can find that at komodoplatform.com/discord. And in addition, be sure to also check out that guide and sign up to our newsletter at komodoplatform.com/guide, and then download that non-custodial wallet and free your crypto from the exchanges.